Good evening, everybody. In Georgia now 8 o'clock, so but probably 5 o'clock also is evening. I'm happy to join this very interesting group and introduce our report on Pichvnari. Just a moment. This Athenian Klerouhi lies on the Black Sea coast in southwestern Georgia, Ajara, populated district at the confluence of the Choloki and Ochhamuri rivers, some 10 kilometers to the north of the town of Kobulet. Pichvnari in English means pine area. Piteous in ancient Greek, based on the Ionian ceramic unearthed at the site. Natia Pipia suggested that Pichvnari was founded by Milesian colonists in the 6th century BC, who also delivered a Carian name to their metropolis, Pitiusa. Pythia believed that Georgian Pichvnari remained an ancient toponym like Turkish Camlici, Bafa close to Miletus itself, as well as Chamlik, near to Of. They later identified it with the Roman imperial period settlement of Pitius, Pitiusa, Pitiae, located on the Black Sea coast of Turkey. Presumably, the same is true concern of another Pitius, modern Pichvinta, Pitsunda, a resort town in the Georgian district of Abkhazia. So our opinion is probably Strabo mentioned this Pitiund first time and mentioned that it's a earlier settlement, but no archaeological data proves it. And he calls this Pitiund Great Pitiund. So probably, maybe, the smaller Pitius, the earlier Pitius, was founded at Kobuleti in Ajara, and probably maybe because of the centuries, he has some mistakes, and after because of its great Pitius, and we have a smaller Pitius minor. So very shortly, I will speak on the history of this of the excavations. It's started since the end of 15th of the 12th century. Sorry. During some agricultural works, some people found ceramics, some coins, etc. And archaeologists based in Batumi, Berzinishvili Institute of the Georgian Academy of Sciences, interested in this area, and the first full-scale excavation started in the 1961. And many interesting items was found, not only the items, the settlement, the cemetery. We can see the one of the most interesting finding from the burial number 1 of the 5th century BC Greek cemetery, but we will speak it in later. So now it's all, of course, all our late professors who are researching these items, and especially this helix crater. So very interesting that for the 13 years, British team, namely Jesus College and Ashmolean Museum, jointly have excavations there at Pichvnari. Many students from the various countries coming there, and indeed we have a good experience of cooperation 8 monographs were published on the Pichvnari in Georgian and English. You can see it everywhere in the internet. Maybe no full text, but some summaries. So it's very interesting fact. Also, it's by the founding of the British side. We have one small cottage there. There are another building of Soviet times. It's not very comfortable. It's you maybe know about the Georgian feasts, and not maybe every day, but in 2 days one our colleagues had this feast at Pichvnari. So many guests coming there. I said about this, and leader from the Georgian, no, sorry, English time, Michael Vickers, and Georgian side, late Professor Emzar Kakhidze. You can see also another person, Nineli Vashakidze. She mostly investigate Hellenistic cemetery, but today we just represent classical period cemetery. So this recent years, it's not so large scale, small scale excavations. Unfortunately, after the death of Emzar Kakhidze, some persons again coming from, for example, you say Mrs. Root, for example. So very shortly, I show the settlement. It's a very, very difficult to image what happened with the Greek settlement. Probably some Georgian scholars, suggested that in Colchis it was some mutual settlements, no separate settlements like another sites of Black Sea or in the Mediterranean. Maybe because we did not found the Greek settlement, just Colchian. Why Colchian? Because it started since late Bronze Age and continues in every stage of the last period, early Iron Age, classical, Hellenistic times, and it's very easy to find all cultural levels of these periods here. It's the eastern part of this settlement. Again, unfortunately, no climate conditions there. Because of this, we have problems with excavations. If raining, it needs to cleaning about 2-3 days, and after these 2-3 days again rain, and it's very slowly. But anyway, you can see these cultural levels. You can it's a western part of this settlement. Said that we found enough material of proving of all the periods. The last year excavations, you can see this basin. So okay, I said about the Bronze, Iron Age, or classical periods, all of our exist. But before of classical cemetery, period cemetery, so-called dune settlements. It's a early Iron Age settlements from Pichvnari. I mentioned this site to the Konio. It's a south of Pichvnari, and in everywhere in Colchis you can say the so-called dune settlements, 8th-7th centuries, and many artifacts also. Probably these settlements linked with some rituals, because we found some ritual items there. You can see this stance, probably stanzas, linked with the bull and phalloi and like this. Mainly this. There are some another also, but for example, sculpture of dog also is linked with some cult of the local goddess and etc. So now we can observe also cemeteries. You can see these cemeteries. There is a Greek 5th century, 4th century, and there is a Colchian cemetery, and this road divide this cemetery, the classical cemetery with the Hellenistic times cemetery. Pichvnari is the only site in the Eastern Black Sea area with what are in a likelihood ethnically Greek burials. Only one burial was robbed in antiquity. Individual inhumation burials predominate for the interment of the dead from relatively wealthy families. Burial pits were dug into which wooden coffins were placed. Some burials just have wooden roofs. Wood is the regular material at Pichvnari, the only exception being the robbed burial 20, which had a stone embankment apparently to support a white limestone stele 3 courses high above the wooden coffin. Rich burials are accompanied by ritual platforms covering large areas. Rich burials found in earlier years yielded magnificent specimens of the jewelries, art, toreutics, large painted pots, and coins from elsewhere. There was an interesting material too in the related ritual platforms. Burials of persons of apparently middling circumstances are the most numerous. Some corpses are buried in wooden coffins, others in roofed or plain pit burials. Burial pits were of different size and the corpses were laid in supine position. There are between 5 and 15 categories of grave goods. Mass-produced goods greatly outnumber those with any artistic merit. Ritual platforms are encountered frequently, but they are not as productive as those designed for the funeral feasts of the wealthier members of the community. There are many burials belonging to the representatives of the relatively poor strata of the Greek population of Pichvnari. Here there are between 2 and 5 categories of grave goods, mass-produced items, in the main. Funeral feasts were the exception here. Iron or bronze nails pointing to the existence of a wooden coffin or roof structure occurred, but rarely. Then there are numerous burials containing no grave goods at all, belonging apparently to the indigent. This is especially the case with burials of the second quarter of the 5th century and of the 4th century BC. This evidence is of great interest in that it sheds light on the character of Greek colonization of the Eastern Black Sea area. We can envisage some of the Greeks residing at Pichvnari making use of imported expensive wines and the ceramic repertoire of the grave assemblies reflect rich table settings. Such residents also enjoy the use of coinage and exotic perfumes imported in colorful flasks. The poor appear to be present in considerable numbers. However, throughout the classical period, Greeks in Pichvnari adhered strictly to such purely Greek burial customs. As an Eastern orientation, with very rare exceptions, occasional cremation, amphora burials, or funeral feasts. Cases of orientation of the dead in other directions are known elsewhere in Greek necropolis in the Black Sea area. The few instances at Pichvnari, which are perhaps due to the Colchian influence, are known only among the earliest burials of the middle decade of the 5th century BC. Pichvnari is the only site in the Black Sea area where the dead were buried with the so-called colons obol from as early as the mid-5th century BC. In other areas, it is recorded only in the 1st century burials. This is perhaps indicative of direct relations between the local settlement and the metropolitan center. Wine was imported from Chios, Lesbos, Tassos, and Mende. Pottery and doubtless silverware were imported. A calyx crater discovered in burial one is a fine example of early classical art. So, okay, I will show now this crater. Just a moment. This is all burials. You can see how in good conditions they are preserved for present times. And what all what about I mentioned are it's Greek. And this calyx crater, very shortly, it says this is a Theseus and Persephone. This we call the Neobit master Neobit, and only 3 analogies elsewhere, one in British Museum, one in Louvre, and one in Ferrara from Etruscan city Spina. But please. There are another what I mentioned, especially this jewelry. You can see Greeks are very interested in the local jewelries. It's very characteristic of the Pichvnari. No, in another areas of Black Sea, you do not find so many items of local jewelry like Pichvnari. So I mentioned also this perfume vessels, red figure, and another Attic production. Also, there are some local production. You can see again. It's a local. And you can. It's very easy to divide this local or Attic production here. So there are many coins, especially from Sinop. This is, for example, very interesting also items, because you can see this very specific ornamentation, very characteristic of Colchian culture, and some of types, no here, unfortunately, with some eyes, we call it Pichvnarian type vessels, characteristic just for Pichvnari. But it's very many common features with Colchian, and they are also found at the Pichvnari. It's a Greek necropolis. So we observe these coins. You can see from elsewhere, from Cyzicus, from Pantikapeum, this, for example, from Sinop. In Phion. So some are not very much quantity, but there are some local Colchian. I will show it later. Very short information of the this year excavations, totally 10 or 11, I don't remember. I work in another sector. The sector of excavations was discovered. No very rich burials. We can see what is some of them, please. Oh, these items you can see. One of its very perfume vessels, very interesting because we find this first time. This ornamentation is a first time for Pichvnari. So now it's coming to the another cemetery. It's very close. I show it with the 5th century cemetery. It's a 4th century cemetery. The later Greek necropolis was in use between the early 4th century and about 330 BC and continued the traditions of the aerial necropolis, in many respects being used intensively for individual burials. Rich ones are accompanied by ritual platforms covering large areas. As was mentioned above, numerous burials contained no grave goods at all. At Pantikapaeum, rich and the poor were interested in the same cemetery in the 5th century, and the same is true at Pichvnari. From the 4th century BC onwards, the rich inhabitants of Pantikapaeum were buried in a separate area, and it's not out of the question that this was also the case at Pichvnari. The grave goods are much inferior to those of the earlier Greek cemetery. For all that, a few gold objects and painted pots were brought to light in recent years. Imported goods are largely Attic black gloss pottery, and there are a single polychrome glass vessel, the traditional import of wine from Chios, Thasos, and Lesbos. Mende continues, and contacts can be observed with the southern Black Sea area, in particular with Heraclea. I showed there some Heraclean amphoras, first time unearthed at Pichvnari, but only at the 4th century cemetery. By the 4th century, local clay vessels were used quite often as grave goods. It's very interesting. In the burials of Greeks, plain pots and jugs predominate. The manufacture of traditional forms of tubular handled jugs continued. Jugs of the Pichvnari type were still being produced in the 4th century BC. One of them, with vertical eyes on the body, is very similar to earlier specimens. Two imitations of oinohoi of the 5th century BC were added since the 4th century BC, those of Skipoi, Kantaroi, Lekitoi, and Ichtiai. In burial 92, iron hoe was found. It's a local hoe. This form is known in Colchis from the late Bronze Age. It seems that Greeks actively used Colchian tools for working the fields at Pichvnari. By the 4th century BC, Greeks of Pichvnari are to be found using even local coins, I mentioned about this, so-called kolchitkas, as grave goods. Although a coin of Pantikapaeum was found during the excavations of 2002. As remarked above, perhaps under the influence of the Colchian culture, fine locally produced jewelry was popular with the Pichvnari Greeks. Other large Greek cemeteries such as Olbia and Pantikapaeum have not yielded such large quantities of gold objects, and several examples of gold, silver, bronze, and iron jewelry were found. Local Colchian coins uses Colchian obol occur frequently among the later Greek burials. Pichvnari is, as I have remarked, the only site in the Black Sea where the dead were buried with the obol from such an early date. Just a moment. So it's a 4th century cemetery. The same constructions, no many difficulties with 5th. So this is grave goods I mentioned. No so very rich like 5th century. You understand 4th century was dramatic for their metropolis, Athens. And it's very clear that population of Pichvnari did not use this so luxury goods like in 5th century. So it's very interesting one. Ring, many beads characteristic of this period. Regilla and also. But this is a ritual platforms. It's very interesting that Colchians, I showed the Colchian, the cemetery, Greeks used these ritual platforms, of course, in the 5th century and in the 4th century. By the it was prohibited in Athens, but colonists used this. No Greeks, no Colchians used the ritual platforms in the 5th century, but another situation in the 4th century. Oh, it's very interesting. What's this coin of Pantikapaeum I mentioned? Because of damage, we have this schematic, just schematic. So now we go to the Colchian cemetery. Field works has been carried intermittently since 1966 on Napurwala Hill, where this cemetery lies. It's also very interesting that all cemeteries, Greek and Colchian, are very close. No, in northern, for example, in Black Sea, this situation is not like this. It's very separate. They are separate. And I add that in the Hellenistic times, it's very interesting. No ethnical cemeteries, but all people are buried in the same one large cemetery. But unfortunately, we can not show this today. 232 burials were examined before 1998, when joint British-Georgian expedition started, and 180 burials since until 210. Unfortunately, after this period, we did not excavate this cemetery. Approximately 100 additional burials have been studied by the Batumi Archaeological Museum expedition in recent years. Assuming that the Napurwala cemetery includes a fair cross-section of the Colchian element in Pichvnari society, the burials studied to date might appear to belong to three social strata of ancient residents of Pichvnari. None of them conspicuously wealthy. Most of the burials in the Colchian cemetery might be said to have been those of ordinary people. Mourners, for the most part, could only afford plain burials, sometimes with a wooden coffin or a wooden roof. Within the burials, they placed a few local and occasionally imported clay vessels, and quite often coins and beads, as well as a number of silver, bronze, or iron bracelets. Many burials of silver, bronze, or iron bracelets. Many burials, however, contained no grave goods at all. A single pottery vessel might have been deposited here and there. A few burials are distinguished by the presence of a gold object. The earring in burial, for example, 305, or the gold pendant hoop in burial 268. In both cases, imported pottery was found. In addition, it is perhaps noteworthy that burial 300, with its St. Valentin Kantaros, included 4 silver coins instead of the more customary one. Another Kantaros of this class was discovered in the Greek necropolis with the ligature E and Q beneath the handle. St. Valentine Kantaroi are widespread in the classical world, but few examples are known from closed contexts. The Pichvnari exams are significant in this respect. Noteworthy too, it is the presence of Colchian coins in large numbers. They may help to resolve some of the still outstanding questions relating to Colchian numismatics. It is difficult to say with any certainty what is the precise significance of the existence of Haron obols in both the Colchian and Greek cemeteries from the latest, the mid-5th century onwards. But the reason may well lie in the evident fact that in swampy land, the dead probably had to be ferried from the settlement to the cemeteries. At all events, the existence of coinage perhaps points to the relatively developed mercantile society. The grave goods reflect at a distance the tastes of manufacturers and consumers in more metropolitan sense. The locally made products at Pichvnari demonstrates that even as Colchian culture reached the peak of its development in the classical period, new forms were coming into existence. This was due to the way in which the culture of the local population of Eastern Black Sea littoral, their burial customs, and their craft production progressively reflected Greek models. These would have included the easterly orientation of the deceased, the placing of coins in their mouths, the emergence of Hellenised forms in pottery and metalwork, and the introduction of the vertical loom. As might be expected, all of this was determined by close contacts between the Colchian population and the Greek world. The burials of the later 4th century BC and Hellenistic period with Eastern orientation ritual plateaus and a coin suggested that the population of Pichvnari was significantly Hellenized by now and thoroughly integrate in the economic life of the Black Sea region. Now I can show this cemetery, 5th century cemetery. But you can see imported vessels also, not just locals, of course, jewelry. Kolch, as you know, the land of golden fleece, very famous with golden. And I mentioned about the ceramic production and the high level of ceramic production in Kolchis. So Kolchidki. These Kolchidki are earlier, and the influence of the Miletus is visible, but step by step, how to say this, images are changed, and they are more like on the local than of Greek origin. Or, for example, even today, the Georgian archaeologists have discussion. Is this a lady or man? And some suggest it's a lady, some men, but no parallels. It's a local image. There are bulls, very popular, you know, bulls. It's very characteristic. I show it's this stands from the early Iron Age, and bulls are some, you know, some part of some beards also are represented, cranes maybe. And last cemetery, last cemetery, 4th century cemetery, more than 2 dozen graves have been explored so far. Unfortunately, we have not so much quantity there, and the present paper is the first in English to introduce you this result of the excavations of this part of Pichvnari cemetery. We plan to publish I mentioned about the Pichvnari monographs. All cemeteries are reflected there, all of them except this. And so we started also preparing this monography, maybe Pichvnari 10 and Pichvnari Colchian 4th century cemetery also will be presented. It is clear that by the 4th century BC, rectangular burial pits with rounded corners were common in this part of the Black Sea area. The upper part in the head area is slightly wider than the feet. Circular burial pits occur, but only occasionally. The burials are dug rather close to each other. Only inhumations have come to light to date. So far, no cremations. Some corpses were placed in wooden coffins. In such cases, the iron nails used for holding the coffin together are arranged on the top of the burial as well as on the bottom. At the level of the grave goods, the details of construction and the size of the wooden coffin given here are based on the positions of the nails. The wood on the basis of analysis of iron corrode product seems to have been Pinus sylvestris. Those burials with nails on top presumably only had a wooden cover. Wooden logs seem to have been placed along the length of the burial, and wooden beams were then nailed at intervals. Sometimes the row of nails is found only at the ends. Most of the deceased were buried directly in the pit. In such cases, nails obviously are not attested. Traces of funeral feasts I mentioned about this date to the 4th century BC were also found, but rarely, no like the Greek cemetery. Occasionally, pots, even an amphora, appear to have been placed close of the burial. Fragments of imported vessels, a gray-ware jug, and the Attic high-stemmed black cloth cup have been unearthed between burials 70 and 71, forming evidence that locals may have imitated this type of Greek burial ritual just since the 4th century BC. As yet, not ritual platforms are attested in the 5th century BC Colchian cemetery. About 500 burials are discovered and no one. So we can see it's just 4th century, since 4th century, Colchians started to use this Greek ritual. Most of the local deceased were led with the head to the north. Some were oriented to the other directions, and as a result of contact with the Greeks, the custom of easterly orientation became gradually popular, especially in the 4th century BC. It is clear from Hellenistic period evidence that the easterly orientation became the predominant burial rituals at Pichvnari. In large burials, the dead must have been interred lying on their back in an extended posture. Medium-sized burials predominate. However, and here the custom of burying the dead in a crouch or semi-crouch position was practiced. Like the 4th century BC Greek necropolis, more burials than hitherto certain no grave goods at all. It's very interesting. It's some same situation. So these local population are very close contacts with the Athenians because of this same situation, same situation with the grave goods and with the no grave goods burials. This suggested that the Colchian population, which was heavily dependent on trade with the Greek colonists, was significantly impoverished compared with the previous century. Of course, this must be related to the weakening of Athens, metropolis of the cleruchy of Pichvnari. It is obvious that the classical or early Byzantine settlement of Colchis were heavily linked to their metropolises, and the weakening of the latter would eventually lead to the demise of overseas settlements situated in the eastern Black Sea, which, unlike of many former colonies or forts located in Pontus or Mediterranean, would not survive autonomously. Imported ceramics significantly decreased in quantity compared with the previous century. There were a few fragments found at the humus layer and ritual platform, and a single relatively well-kept gray-ware jug discovered in burial 70. Similar items were earlier found in grave 14, 19, 18, 20, and 47. Gray-ware vessels also occurred in the settlement and the 4th century Greek necropolis at Pichvnari. Although they have not been found elsewhere in Georgia, there are, however, numerous parallels known from the western as well as the northern Black Sea. Similar vessels discovered in graves at Thracia and Apollonia are dated to the second half of the 4th century BC by their excavators, who regard them as local wares. A similar vessel from Histria is also dated to the 4th century BC. Gray and red clay pottery seems widespread in the Bug area and on the right bank of the lower and middle courses of Dnieper too. It is considered that they were manufactured in the Greek colonies of the northern Black Sea area. Some of them have been imported from Thrace. It's according to authors who published this. Our specimens find direct parallels with those discovered in the Tiramba necropolis, though to have been made in Phanagoria. The same holds true for those from the western part of the Bosporus, the Voikovo necropolis, and the Don area. Red-fired specimens are also found in contexts as late as the 3rd century BC. These are thought to be of Bosporan manufacture, and they are in fact widespread in the classical cities of the Bosporan kingdom. There is an important lacuna in the general picture, namely the cities of the southern Black Sea area, which have not been nearly so intensively studied as the rest. Gray-ware vessels found in the Pontic area were probably made in single manufacturing center. It may well be significant that the importation of Heraclean amphoras and gray-ware jugs to Pichvnari began simultaneously, and it is tempting to think of the set of manufacture of gray vessels having been located in the southern sea area. As mentioned above, by the 4th century BC, local clay vessels were used quite often as grave goods in burials of the Greeks, so even more of them are confirmed in the Colchian cemetery. The manufacture of traditional forms continued. A jug decorated with horizontal grooves was discovered in burial 69. Similar to items dated to the 5th century BC, it is highly artistic work. Similar jugs, but with slightly different adornment, are found in the 4th century BC Greek necropolis. Another type of jug with 3 horizontal lines or knots was discovered in burial 70 burial 70. Tubular jugs with similar ornamentation were found in both Greek and local cemeteries dating to the 5th century BC, as well as a small clay jug from burial 72, a clay pot with horizontal lines of notches from burial 73 occurs yearly just in the 5th century BC Colchian cemetery. Some Colchian clay vessels were made in imitation of Greek ceramic wares since the 5th century BC. Their number increased in the 4th century BC. Single oinochia of so-called Hellenized shapes were discovered in burial 74 and burial 27. Similar vessels are found in the 1st century Greek necropolis. I'm finished. Local Cantaros-like vessel and the fish plates were discovered at the 4th century BC Colchian cemetery in 2014. Among other kinds of grave goods are silver radial earrings, kolchitkas, bracelets, and etc. The Pichvnari discoveries make it possible to arrive at some conclusions. Greek interest in the Eastern Black Sea area becomes ever more apparent from the Periclean period onwards, and it's reflected in developments at Pichvnari. It would appear that Colchian leaders considered it reasonable to establish close economic and cultural relations with an influential foreign power. This would explain why Greek settlers apparently lived in a close and peaceful relations for over a century and a half. The scanty group assemblage of the late 5th and early 4th centuries might be held to reflect the reduced conditions of the Athenians and their weakened international standing after the Peloponnesian War. We still do not know what kind of settlement functioned at Pichvnari, but whatever it was, we can perhaps begin to see that Greeks of Pichvnari in the role of middlemen between Colchis and main sense of the Greek word. And just a moment, I showed the last cemetery. It's new cemetery, please. It's very, very good conditions for excavate here because of sand and like this. It's very easy to divide cultural levels, humus, and like this. So, but sometimes it's terrible rains, and you can see it's 1 year we excavated just one and empty burial about 2 years ago. So some items what I mentioned, this maybe it's Heraclean, I mentioned this, and locals and other very small quantity, jewelry, no so rich artifacts, very small quantity of gold and also coins. And of course, ritual platforms. It's, as I said about, they are about 5 or 6 among the 100 burials. It's small quantity if you compare with the Greek cemeteries. But you can see how they are come to light, these ritual platforms. So we had 2 sectors, not 2, 3. Third was Hellenistic for this year, and about 10 also burials were discovered. You can see that this team, no large-scale excavations, unfortunately. So we had a small part to the west, to the sea, and about this. Some of them were empty again, and you can see this material also. Oh, this, for example, just the nails, no artifacts. We are working now on the items. They are the photos of packing of this. And the last information, it was we organized our cultural heritage protection agency, which financed our excavations. It was a host of the very well famous Limes Congress. It was held in Batumi, and participants also visit our excavations, and our one colleague, Miranda Turmanidze, explained some of these very hot finds. Thank you very much.